Joe, can you tell us about Nick White when he came to you with a decision about his retirement?
Yeah, we had a coffee last Wednesday actually, and talked about him finishing up, and that he felt it was the right time, and so we made a bit of a plan, and he's such a good character in the group. It's funny because I've coached against him lots of times and thought he was a pain in the neck. He's such a good little player, and he's around the fringes, and he's linking, and he kicks really well, and he talks quite well.
And was that plan last week to start him, knowing that he was going to finish?
That was a thought, and in the context of Jake playing well last week and playing well the week before, and Tate being so good, and I thought Tate was super, albeit on the wing in the weekend, and he was super coming off the bench into number 9 the week before. But I think Whitey's got such massive respect inside the squad that it seemed a fitting way for him to finish. And I'm not a sentimentalist. It's a test match, and you pick people who are capable of playing that test match, and we believe that Nick is.
Joe, if the plan was maybe to have him in there, and Jake had a really good test in 2 and 1, what actually sees Nick become the first choice then?
Well, Nick played really well against Fiji. I think if you remember him coming off the bench against Fiji, I felt he was part of turning the game at that time, and the forecast is poor, so Nick's kicking game is another element of it, and his experience. And so, those players are really tight amongst themselves. Jake knows Nick well. Tate, they're a fine group of 9s, but a fine group of men, and they had their own discussions, and it was a decision that we made, believing that Nick can do the job.
And is there, like, obviously the series is done and dusted, but there's plenty to play for, and also a World Cup only 2 years away. Like, how much do you consider going, well, maybe if we're going to make a change to Tate just to change the picture, or was it always Nick White?
Well, Tate's not retiring; he's far from it, and we're pretty excited about that. Tate's a young 9 and a young man, and he's building his craft. I think his kicking game has really improved, and he's such a competitor as well, Tate. So we feel, as I said, we're really well served by 3 9s who are all capable of playing at the level. And in our last Test match, we felt that Nick would fill that role really strongly, and we know we've got the security of Tate on the bench, and as you know, we'll see Tate involved in the game.
In terms of managing people's headspace this week, what's this the biggest? Where does it rank in terms of the biggest challenges in getting players off the canvas to go?
Yeah, it's right up there. Incredibly deflated group. Tuesday was tough actually to get them up off the canvas, and today there was a little bit of an upswing, and we've just got to keep that momentum. Hopefully they can be sharp at captain's run tomorrow, and then springboard their way into the Test match. It is a challenge because all that emotional energy, psychological energy that was expended, the way things finished, the sense of frustration, and it's almost like a grieving process by the time they've gone through those first few days, and giving them time to breathe a bit, and then try to elevate the spirits and the tempo.
Joe, is Jake injured?
Jake trained today. Yeah.
Why the thinking he couldn't do the job this weekend, and Nick was better for that?
I already explained that. Nick has an excellent kicking game. He has the confidence of the players, and he has a really good game under his belt against Fiji, and I thought he played really well against the British and Irish Lions for the Western Force. And so he's built his way into contention, and at the same time, Jake has done really well. But then Tate has done really well as well, and that's what I just explained, that there are 3 nines who are all in contention every week, and this week we've decided to go with Nick White.
Do you get the feeling that the players also want to send Nick off on a high? Is that a possible motivation?
I know it's part of the motivation. It is. He's so well respected in the group. You know, he's been at the top of the game for a dozen years. So when you make that contribution over 12 years, as I said, it's not sentimentality, but it is a reality. When someone is important to the group want to support them. And Jake's part of that group. I had a conversation with Jake, obviously.
Joe, on the sort of motivation and that energy, when you have a sold-out crowd as well, how much can that help really sort of lift what the like cricket? I guess before is we've had record crowd MCG, record crowd Suncorp. What does it mean to see that support slowly getting behind this team?
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't sound like support behind us just with the sea of red and the volume of noise they make, but what I would hope and what I do see, even in the street, walking down the street, the amount of people who are excited about supporting the Wallabies, and that's been quite uplifting for us.
Joe, where is Rob Ballatini at? Did he go backwards injury-wise from playing last week? And I guess how much about South Africa is on your radar with him?
Yeah, it's a good question because I'm not quite sure of the answer, other than to say he's not right this week. It is the same injury. It just tightened up. So it was precautionary really bringing him off, and it's probably precautionary not playing him this weekend just because we don't want to cause more damage when we have a big test schedule coming up.
What about Carlo Chisano? Joe, no spot for him on the bench. Is that an injury-related thing? Or?
Yeah, he's had a really tough week, obviously, Carlo. He's copped a lot of online abuse, and yeah, the only thing I'd say about Carlo, and in defence of Carlo, there were just over 54 Gs of force, direct force that went through the neck, along with almost 2,200 rads of rotational force, which is enough to cause serious injury. Not to a rugby player who's as well conditioned as Carlo, but he's probably best just left to take a deep breath. I think we're all aware of Newton's third law that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. When that force hits him and the speed of his head collapsing down, he recoiled out the back of the ruck, and I don't think he wanted to recoil like that, but that's the nature of force, that there's an equal and opposite reaction. So I think for Carlo it's better that he sits this one out. We weren't sure about him on Tuesday. He was still pretty sore, so he was great today. He was right back to the irrepressible character that he is.
So just for clarity, it wasn't a concussion?
No.
And Taniela Tupou coming back into the starting team for Allen.
Yeah.
What have you seen that made you think he was the right guy?
We saw him in the First Nation Pacifica game. I thought he really worked hard there, and he's trained well. So we're hopeful that Taniela can continue that upswing and bring us a real burst of energy. Because I think one of the reasons we've made a few changes is that when everyone's as flat as they were, I think just bringing a few newer guys in, it just freshens things up, and those guys know it's an opportunity for them, and I suppose it's just a way to shift the malaise that continued for the 48 hours post-game to try to get that upswing I described.
I presume the review process into last week's games has been done and you've been spoken to about that. Can you
talk about your satisfaction or otherwise with that review? And second part is, how have you wanted the team to move on from last week and the controversy so they don't get stuck in that?
Absolutely. We've got a test in 48 hours, and you can lament all sorts of things. And I actually feel like Andrea Piatti had a good game. And there's a couple of decisions we might not agree with, but I thought he refereed well. So we're not looking at refereeing decisions, we're looking at what we could have done better, making sure that we try to repair those things. But also, as I mentioned, there was a real deflation in the players, and so we also looked at some of the good things we did. And my belief is that 18 months ago, no one gave us a chance of challenging the Lions, and I think in total it's 3 tries apiece and 4 tries to 3, and not nearly as much between the teams as maybe people might have expected. Now, they've won the series in full, I'd be full of praise for the way that they have worked their way through this tour to be unbeaten so far. And the way they worked their way back into that game at 23-5 down, the experience they have, the quality, the depth, I think it was to the forefront. And even, they've got 2.5 minutes left, and they've got a line out as a starter in their own half to try to work their way back into the game. And we've got to be better than allowing them to get as close as they did before they finally finished it off.
You mentioned online views there to Carlo, like he's pretty active on social media, etc. Like is he
not this week, he's not.
Has he come and expressed that he's been affected by it quite bad? Just an awareness?
No, it's more come from other players. I've advised Carlo to stay away from the media, full stop, and the opinions that are out there, because we've tried to just deal in the facts, and the facts of what's law and what forces occurred, and to let him know that we know what caused the equal and opposite reaction, and we have faith in him, and that will continue.
So, can I just clarify, Alan, is that long term? Is he expected to be around for the Rugby Championship? Like, what's the situation?
Yeah, he's just down the corridor. I just chatted to him. We're hopeful that he'll be back during that Rugby Championship. We're not quite sure when, but that's our hope.
Joe, I appreciate your focus is on your own team this week, but you gave a debut to a kid in 2015 called Ty Furlong, who's now win his 9th consecutive Lions start in a row. Did you always have a sense that he was going to be a player to make his mark on the game?
Well, I'd rather he wasn't starting for them for the 3rd test in a row, because he's a pain in the neck, really. He is such a gifted and he's such a good character. I love guys like that who really put everything into the game, but then he's such a good character in the team. I remember when Tig first came in, first time I met him, he came in with his mum and dad with Collie McEntee into the Leinster Academy, and I was coaching there obviously, and got brought into the office and introduced himself, blocked the sun briefly, and those shoulders haven't gotten any smaller since. He's certainly an impressive young man, and he's a world-class player. So if he wants a day off on Saturday, I'd be happy to see that.
What makes him world-class, Joe?
I think the first time he played a couple of tests for us in Ireland, he found it pretty tough, as young props often do. And so the first thing you realise is that this kid's resilient. He had a couple of injuries early in his career. He got through those, then he got knocked back a couple of times early on, particularly at scrum. South Africa was a bit of a baptism of fire, and since then he's just grown into a player who's multi-purpose. I'll never forget the deft little offload he gave to Bundy Aki to go through a gap to give CJ Stander a try, and Twickenham, those deft skills that he has with the ball, his ability to carry himself, and he's very good, quite dynamic in the defensive line. We were here on tour in 2018, and I remember David Pocock just about to decide to get over the ball, and Tyke Furlong putting him back a couple of metres from the ball. So, he's a pretty well-rounded, literally well-rounded character.
Joe, he might not be at the peak of his powers at the moment, Taniela, but in previous seasons when he has been the best we've seen, he's been put in the same conversation as Tyke. Could you see Taniela getting back there? Because he's got similar traits, his depth skills, his ability to move for a big man, as well as the core skills for a front row.
Yeah, and even watching him at training today, he is dynamic. His ability to move his feet and generate force is impressive. And so, we'd love to see that. And Saturday will be a first step back toward that, I'm hoping. As I mentioned, the First Nations Pacifica was probably a good example of that, where he looked dynamic. He got a bit of line speed defensively. He looked like he was very keen at scrum time and carrying the ball. So there are a couple of things that we'll need from him Saturday night.
Will Skelton showed what a difference he can make. Is there conversations about what the rest of the year looks like, even beyond that with the Wallabies?
Yeah, and so we've had those, but they're probably just in their early stages, and those conversations will become a bit clearer probably post-Saturday. I'll be catching up with Will on Sunday, and we'll confirm a bit of a map forward from there. But he brings a confidence of having the experience of winning things, and he brings a confidence that's contagious a little bit. The guys around him get confidence from playing alongside Will.
Still a fair way out the World Cup, but do you see Will being able to, he's 33 now, do you see him being able to play through into that World Cup?
Yeah, the volume he plays, and he's certainly contracted beyond there with La Rochelle, so I think it's realistic that he remains part of the conversation. It's so hard 2 years away to be accurate predicting player performance, but he's a behemoth, really, isn't he? He's a very big human, but he's also agile and skillful, and he's got great connection in the group. And the other thing is, he is incredibly proud every time he puts the gold jersey on. He's incredibly keen to be part of things.
So you mentioned
Last couple, please.
The 10's been deflated this week. What's been your message about the opportunity of Saturday? It could go two ways. It could be a 3-0 result or a 2-1 result, and decided by a last-minute try in Melbourne. What's been your message to the players about what's on stake? What they could wake up to on Sunday morning?
Yeah, it's hard. I guess we've tried to stay pretty pragmatic and maybe not talk about outcomes of 2-1 or 3-0. Just, how do we make sure we stay better connected here? How do we make sure that our body height's right here? How do we make sure we win the race over the ball there? How do we make sure we do these various things as well as we can? Because if you can accumulate enough of those things done well, then you put yourself in the picture. The bounce of the ball is a cruel thing sometimes. Even in the first test, we're watching and we felt sure that Harry Potter's going to score, and the ball's bouncing forward, and then suddenly it kicks right to left, right before the post and the corner flag. So, sometimes you might not quite get that luck, but you want to create opportunities to get a bit of luck as much as you can, and you do that by being really good at the things that connect you up and the things you need to execute in the moments that matter.
You've sought clarity about the diving at the line from World Rugby. What was the feedback there, and what are you preparing for now?
I mean, we can't reveal the content of those discussions, so we're just preparing as best we can. So with regard to that, you know, probably the frustration is that, you know, there's this guy offside when they tap it, and it would have been great if they'd just come back and played the scrum and maybe had a chance for us to clarify, is that dangerous play or is that acceptable? And if it's acceptable, try to come up with a plan to defend it, because you know, we've got two tacklers who are underneath Dan as he goes over, and we really need to get maybe another one in behind, but then it's going to be very hard to avoid head contact because he's head first. So we've come up with a couple of solutions during the week that if it happens, we'll be ready for it. I guess the worry is, you know, what kids seem what they see on TV, what club players see on TV, they tend to try to emulate, and I guess that's one of the things that they try to clear up with the law clarification March 2022, and they underpinned it with if there is any extent of dangerous play, then a try cannot be the reward. Now, I'm not saying that it wasn't a try, because I'm not sure how to assess the danger, and I guess that's one of the things that World Rugby will probably go back and have a look at and try to assess, and then if they need to make further clarification, we'll get feedback on that.
Thanks all.
Thank you.